Hey there, Bridge family, it's Pastor Jeff. And today I'd like to talk to you for a minute about learning the lesson of King Saul. That you and I, whether you are a Christian and we're talking about God's grace in sanctification, or if you're not yet a Christian and we're talking about God's essential miraculous grace in salvation, I want to encourage you to learn the lesson of King Saul and do not take God's grace for granted. Do not assume that because God is coming and offering his grace to you now, that will be something that will continue indefinitely regardless of how you respond. No. You and I pray, will respond to God's grace by faithfully obeying whatever it is that he's calling us to and whatever it is that he wants to do through us. Now, in King Saul's example, we're told that the Spirit of the Lord departed from him. Many of you may ask yourself, well, what's that got to do with me? Well, let me tell you, if you're not yet a Christian and the Lord has come knocking at the door of your heart and he is actively involved in getting your attention and you willfully and ultimately push him away, if you ultimately deny him, he will ultimately deny you. And in a similar sense, if you are a Christian, you'll never lose his presence and his power of having saved and captured you by grace, but you can quench the Spirit. If the Lord is looking to do something in and through you, and again, you ultimately say no and push away and choose the path, the broad road of disobedience, then you can and often and likely will lose the opportunity to have been graced into a greater utilization of the Lord. If you say no and push away or continue to fight and resist, if you're not fat, and by fat I mean faithful, available, and teachable, you run the risk of being put up on the shelf. You run the risk of the Lord saying, okay, if you don't want to be a part of what I'm doing, you won't be a part of what I'm doing. And I got to tell you, there is no sadder place for a Christian to be than placed on the shelf. Imagine Moses spending those last years in the desert. You don't want to die in the desert. Friend, I pray that you and I will take away the lesson of King Saul and never take God's grace for granted. Whether today is your day of salvation, or if today is the day that you get blessed to be sanctified into a new and greater role of refinement, I pray that we will say, yes, Lord, not just with our lips, but with our lives. Not just acknowledging the Lord in our head or working for him with our hands, but by giving him our whole heart, because it always comes back to the heart. Amen and amen.